Welcome to Exploring Boys Education, a monthly podcast produced by the International Boys Schools Coalition. I'm your host, Bruce Collins. In each episode, we explore contemporary topics impacting boys, their educators, and boys' educational institutions. Our goal is really to provide a platform for open and honest discussion about the challenges and opportunities facing boys in today's world. We believe by working together, we can create a better future for all boys. As we near the end of season 4 of Exploring Boys Education and look forward to the IBSC annual conference in Auckland, New Zealand in about a month's time, I'm thrilled to highlight that close to 600 delegates from all IBSC regions will join us at Westlake Boys High School from July 5th to 8th. In addition, I'm pleased to be joined in this episode by IBSC Executive Director Tom Batty. Tom, soon you'll have been with IBSC on staff for a year, and you've done a wonderful job with our monthly newsreels on the podcast. So good, in fact, that you've been promoted from newsreader to special guest today. And I'm looking really forward to speaking with you about educating boys and the importance of what it is we do as educators of and leaders in boys' schools. So thank you for joining me for this conversation today.
No, thank you, Bruce. And to be clear, you are indeed master of the mic. I know my position in this process, so no, it's great to be with you and to be with you in this slightly different context. But thank you. Thanks for the invitation and looking forward to it.
Tom, before we dive into talking about the future of boys' education, I'd love you to share firstly how you became involved with the IBSC initially, and then what inspired you as a head of a boys' school to be part of the organization in a fully fledged kind of way.
Thanks, Bruce. And this is important, obviously, because it's directly linked with what I'm doing at the moment. And I guess it goes back to when I first got involved with boys' schools, because I was co-educated all the way through, and then obviously went to university and being co-ed. And I started my teaching in a co-ed school in New Zealand on the Coromandel there. So a story I often tell, which I'll quickly go through, is that I was teaching at this school and I've been there a little while. And I used to play football for the local town and coach the first 11 football team, boys football team at the school. In the morning, I'd do the boys football team, and in the afternoon, I'd play. And quite often, the boys from the football team would come down on the sidelines when I was playing and offer a few words of well-chosen advice to my lack of performance or otherwise. And it was the Monday. It was a Monday, and I was teaching what would be the last year of school maths. And they were asking me about the game, and I was asking them. We were talking about the game, and a girl put her hand up and said, "Mr. Batty." I said, "Yes." He said, "Could we please get back on with the lesson?" And I felt absolutely terrible. And I was convinced myself quite rightly I hadn't been doing my job properly. And about 4 months after that, I'd done my 2 years at that school, at Thames High School, and I went down and I took a job at St. Patrick's College in Wellington, my first boys' school. And it was when I was there that I looked back on that moment and I thought, well, maybe I had been doing my job properly for about 50% of the class, because I started to feel that boys not only develop later and more slowly than girls, but they, because of that, probably they learn differently, and sharing story is a huge part of it. So that was my journey to boys' schools, and from that moment, other than a year tutoring university, I've worked in boys' schools, and it was when I went back from the Southern Hemisphere back to the UK, and I was working at Eton, and I was running a boarding house, and when I was told that I had a new chaplain. And I went down to meet him, this chap called Tony Jarvis, and he seemed very nice, and he was chatting to a few of the boys, and I left him to it. And then he was in again, and I got chatting to him again, and I suddenly sort of realised, this bloke knows what he's talking about. And then I found out, of course, from him that he'd not long since been running Roxbury Latin School in just outside Boston. And he started talking. He was a founding member of the IBSC, and he started talking to me about it. And I learned an awful lot, because Tony was sort of chap you could learn an awful lot from, and he was a big influence on my life. So that was my first real awareness of IBSC. And then I moved to Melbourne and running as head Scotch College in Melbourne, all boys school, and kept in touch with Tony, and had got to know a few other people involved with IBSC, not least the head of Eton at the time, Tony Little, who was obviously my boss at the time before I went to Melbourne, and chatting to him about it. And then I was approached, I put in to host the IBSC annual conference, which we did in 2012 at Scotch. I really enjoyed that. And from there, I went on to be on the board and then chair the board. So that's sort of like a potted history of my involvement. So having become head and hosted the conference, and being then involved with the board, you start to wonder about, what is it? Why is it? What inspires you to, as you asked me, to continue to be part and to work with the organisation as a head? And that really comes down to some basic things that drive you. For me, I believe, and have always believed since I thought about it, education to be a really, really important thing. I believe in it. I believe in the power of and getting young people to take a degree of control of their own lives. I believe that brings benefit to themselves and benefit for the communities they'll serve. And I also believe if they don't take control of their own lives to some degree, others will do it for them. And I don't believe that's a good thing for people. And it's not good for them, and it's not good for society as a whole. So I also feel that boys' schools offer choice to families and an important part in the educational mix. Given those things we always say, boys develop different time, different rates, so they're sort of enables boys' schools to act with intent for what we know works, what still works, or we can keep learning works best for boys. And so if you think it's important and you think there's a place for it, you want to do it as well as you can. And I believe as a head, you're sort of challenged with this, that your challenge ultimately is using all the levers that you have as a head, people, resources, contacts, monies, if you have monies, all the levers you have to best impact on the level of each individual boy in your school. And as a head, to do that, you've got to keep learning. You got to, that's saying you got to kick hard just to stay still in your position. So you've got to work really hard to keep moving forward and to keep improving things for those in your care. And I believe that we learn best when we've got a framework of familiarity, that then we're exposed to things which are different. So we've got a reference point and some building blocks, but we've got something that drags us forward to look at things that are different. And I'm attracted to things that are different. And IBSC provides that. It provides that through its professional development. It provides that, importantly, through collegiality as a head and what you can provide for staff of your school. Because so much of the learning, whether it be informal, whether it be structured in person or structured online, so much of it connects people with people from around the globe. So they're bouncing what's familiar against things that are different. And IBSC is a really rare gift that it can offer that, and it does it superbly, not least through your great works, Bruce, with the online things, but it offers that really, really powerfully. It advocates, of course, for boys' schools, which is important, to be able to talk about why we have them, what they do well, and what they provide in terms of choice and the advancement for best learning for boys. And I also strongly believe, and it's linked to those earlier points, that it's important in education, particularly, not to be insular, to feel part of something bigger than oneself. Because if you don't feel that, we tend to retreat into our own immediacy and you start to believe your own press if you're not careful. So you got to have something bigger than your own school, bigger than your own community, and it's from that, I think, that you learn best and you can best progress things. And IBSC offers that on a global sense. All those things I've mentioned.
So, Tom, I think maybe we can dive right in. And I know our schools are wrestling with the opportunities and responsibilities that exist for boys in the 21st century and beyond. And so maybe we can start there about how boys' schools can best prepare boys for those opportunities and the responsibilities that will rest on their shoulders in the 21st century. What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, important, Bruce, and my mind goes backwards before it goes forward. So I focus first of all on what I think is the purpose of education, and I see it as twofold essentially. One is it's there to inculcate a culture in young people of participation, and to do that, it looks to look at all the accumulated knowledge from the past, all the skills, and to pass those on to the next generation so that we can develop in each generation skills, a sense of purpose, a desire to participate, and the ability for young people to take control of their own lives and contribute to a greater good. And I believe that's always been the case. And it's very, very important, that culture of participation and society building. But there is another side, and that is you need societies to keep advancing. And to keep advancing, you need to inculcate in young people an adaptability to complexity and to variety, because you need them to be able to be prepared for what they can't quite see, for what lies over the horizon. And so it's education there to do a bit of both. It's a bit of participation, but also advancement. There's a lovely quote that I often come back to out of one of my favourite novels as a young lad, The Day of the Triffids by John Wyndham, in which they're set up and they're barricaded by electric fences from these triffids trying to get at them. And this chap says, if we focus solely on the skills we need to make a living without allowing time for thought, then knowledge stagnates and people with it. So you can't just do the first bit, you've got to do the second bit. And so when I look at the 21st century skills, and as people say, and what we're going to need to equip boys with, we're going to continue to do both, need both, but increasingly it's going to be that latter.
Tom, as you and I have spoken about education in the past, and I've heard you in conversation with others too, you often refer to this term, a broad liberal education for boys. And I'd like us in a moment to dive into what the benefits are of a broad liberal education for boys. But just for clarity's sake, for our listeners who are from different parts of the world, what do you mean when you use that term, a broad liberal education for boys?
Those things I said before about participation and advancement, it's my view that they're best achieved with boys by finding them interests that grow to passions and then honing mastery in them. So find them something they like doing and then get them good at it. Because if you can find, as I used to always say at the school I was involved in, if you can find for each child, each boy, a peg on which to hang his hat, what he's really learning is the world has many pegs for his many hats. And so what you're trying to do is to get boys interested in things and good at them, so that being interested and working hard to get good at things become habit forming. And that's how you present. And to me, interested people become interesting people, and interesting to others, and interesting in the workplace and advancement. So I don't think it matters too much what it is that a boy gets interested in and good at. It's finding something for him. So when I think of a broad liberal education, I mean one that's focused on the growth of the whole boy across a broad canvas. So it's one that's steeped in those, as I said, it's steeped in providing opportunity for boys to be able to explore and find things they like. And it's populated, its teachers that come into such an education are those that have themselves interests and passions, and they have themselves mastery within certain areas. And so that they can use those to offer to the boys and to help guide them to find it in themselves, that feeling in themselves of the confidence that comes from enjoying something, being passionate about it, and getting good. Not necessarily, obviously, you're not going to be the best, or hold on, someone might be, but you're generally just trying to get good at it and feel good in a present. So you've got something you can contribute. You've got something that you can offer. I often use the image of education being a three-headed dragon. One head is what we teach, and it's generally got the name curriculum. Another head has got the name assessment and qualification, and those two sort of get on. And then the third head, which is oft forgotten, is how we teach and how we go about each other, and the human side of it rather than the process side of it. And I'm much more interested in that bit, and I always have been. And I think that, in my view, a broad liberal education plays on that third head of the dragon. The other bits are important, but secondary to it. It believes that if you get that bit right, if you get the environment right, the human side of it, then the other bits follow, not the other way around.
I think so much of what you share resonates with my experience teaching in a boys' school here in South Africa, Tom. Of what I always loved was it just seemed to me that every boy who was in that space had an opportunity to find their niche, but also to be celebrated for that niche. And there was a sense of freedom for those boys to explore what that was, particularly in their younger years, and maybe as they grew older, some of them would sort of specialize, but other boys would continue to be involved in a whole host of things that just added so much value, not only to their own lives, but I think to their peers, to the world out there. So many had a vision or their eyes open to the need in the world and wanted to pursue that as well, which, it was a beautiful, beautiful thing.
I think that's right, Bruce. I think that's dead right. Because, sorry to get, because something you touch on there is the way you were speaking had a sense of timelessness about it. And that's important in it too. If you can remove some of the obsession with content and testing, then and replace it with confidence, which is what our broad liberal education does, then you create more time. You create time that's so important for boys. Boys just, they need that time to develop. They need that time to explore. They need that time to get stuff wrong and to come round. They really do. And so, exactly as you put it, it can take a whole journey for the development. But if you're continually hitting it with content test, failure, measure, then you don't get the magic.
So, Tom, you spoke about confidence now again. What are some of the benefits for boys over and above confidence of a broad liberal education? What is in it for boys?
Well, the big one is the one we just sort of touched on, I think, Bruce, and that is time and space. I think that, it's something that number of people, Richard Reeves makes the point very clearly, and a number of people have said it, that for whatever reasons, on average, boys and girls develop at different times and at different rates. Boys, on average, generally later and slower. And so having more time and creating more space for them to explore themselves and what they're interested in, and more time to hone the enjoyment in getting good at things, the better it is for them. It suits them. Boys, again, all these things for whatever reasons, but boys have that thing that they need to feel respected and valued if they're going to have the confidence to take a step. You know, we have to know them and value them and be interested in them. That Michael Reichert, lovely turn of phrase. You've got to reach them before you can teach them. And I really strongly believe that that's true, that they need to feel of worth, and they have a desire to contribute to something bigger than themselves. But they need to feel of worth to do that. They need to feel a sense of purpose. And they also, they need to be able to feel that they can access and have a degree of success with those things that we tell them are important. And if the things that we're continually telling them are important, you know, these short term and things that they can't quite access and they can't get success on because it's happening more quickly than they would like, or their minds are on other things, then they'll tune out. They'll just, not for me, tune out. And I think that, so again, those points enable that space. They create that intimacy of relationship with mainly with teachers and other people involved in their education.
Tom, earlier when you were sharing about what you mean by a broad liberal education, you spoke about boys being interested in things and becoming skilled in those things. How can we encourage boys to be interested, skilled, and involved in learning and society?
It's having people around them, as I said earlier, that themselves have interests, they have mastery, but they also have relational capacity. They have the capacity to form learning relationships of intimacy with boys. So they have that skill to build relationships, to maintain relationships, repair relationships when they go wrong. They know how to work with reciprocity. They know how to build trust and take time. If we do these things, then we take boys on this journey of finding what works for them, rather than trying to put a cookie cutter on them that says, you're this, you're one of that, this is what you best learn at this age, so that's what you're going to best learn. It's that intimacy that to create that. You know, this is why I feel that if you get boarding right in a school, it's absolutely brilliant, because you have that intimacy. And if you get it wrong, it's a disaster. But if you get it right, it speaks to the best in education for boys.
It's funny, as you were sharing, Tom, I remember starting what some people thought was a joke at the time, but we had many clubs and societies at the school where I was at. And some boys approached me because they knew of my passion for coffee. And they asked if we could establish what they branded the Caffeine Club. And so we started a club or a society that essentially people thought was about drinking coffee, but it was actually about diving into the science of coffee and getting really interested in it and upskilling some of them in terms of their coffee making abilities or whatever. But just what you mentioned there really struck me in the process of being involved in that society, the Caffeine Club. The number of really significant relationships that were built, not only between the boys themselves, but between me and other staff who were involved and those boys, and the opportunity we had to guide them into a deeper understanding of who they were through something which seemed pretty meaningless. But the fact that there was a freedom to have that as a society at the school it turned into this is a really wonderful opportunity for growth and for learning, and some boys picked up skills and went on to be baristas while they were studying at university or whatever it was. That's the essence for me of if you have that freedom in a space, you can really tap into what boys are interested in.
Well, Bruce, you can scrap my podcast and just tell that story, because that is it in an essence. It really is, and the place in that we haven't touched on, which is so important, of boy voice, of their voice, and their sense that they are part of it. It's not just you running the coffee club; they're running it as well, and it's their thing, it's their niche thing that they have with you, and through that. They're learning so much. I mean, the bit, again, it's so easy to forget that they are observing all the time. And so when you have your coffee club that you formed, they want to know why it's different and why it's you and how you relate to that difference. And they're watching to see how you treat this young person, this boy who comes into the coffee club. How do you treat him? And not just how you treat him, but how does how you treat him compare with how other teachers treat him when he's naughty or does something funny? That's what they're really learning. And then with that, you bring in a bit of purpose, like you said, and the science of coffee. Like I said, you got it there. Just do that.
Interestingly, we were on a call with women leaders in boys' schools for a wonderful program that Laurie Hamilton Durbin facilitated. But something that stuck out for me in that conversation, we were speaking about, or the group was speaking about, the culture of a school and how you foster a wonderful culture in the school. And the response from the panel was overwhelmingly that recruitment was so important, that the people you have in a space are so important in terms of creating the culture. So as we've spoken about all these ways we can develop boys and help them to understand their place in the world, if we consider the people we have in schools, the teachers, those who are on the coalface and busy with boys on a daily basis, what are the qualities of a good teacher for boys?
They've got to have their own interests and passions. Now, one of those, you want to be their subject area. You want them to be passionate about their subject area, because boys will see that and they'll respond to that. They'll observe it, and even if there are other things that don't go well, they'll like the fact that the person is passionate about, because it shows that the teacher has found their thing, has found something that they feel they can carry with them and contribute with. And boys want to see that. They want to see, what is it about me that I can develop, that I can take forward and contribute to society, and be part of things bigger than myself, solve problems, and help build things better. They want to see it. So when they see it in other people, they like it. They like seeing it, and they like to see that mastery, that someone's good at it. They love it. They love it when they're really good at it, and that side of it. They need somebody who takes time to know them. They want to know you're along the journey with them, even and especially when they get it wrong. Especially when they get it wrong. They want to be. I remember saying to a young lad, they want to hear messages like, you can't do that, and there's consequence for it. And you're sitting there with their parents, as you say it, maybe. Well, hopefully you are that. The school loves you, and we love you, but you just can't do that, and we're not going to put up with it. They need to know you're with them on the journey. You've got to value their interests. Most of all, and we used to have this, question when we interviewed staff coming in, because as you say, your staff are so important. You go through it, and there was one question that we always asked, which was, what's the most important thing a teacher does? we asked it to everybody. You get some, great answers, and of course you sit there thinking about. And I suspect that the most important thing a teacher in a boys' school does is care. If they really, really care, boys know that. And to the broader point, that was raised quite rightly in that brilliant event with women in leadership, it is so important because your levers for bringing about improvement, I feel, in a school or any organisation, certainly a cultural, structural, and your physical environment, and they all feed off each other. But the key to it is the cultural one. You've got to then develop your structures, how you're going to do it, and then your environment to support it and make it and maximise the strengths of it. But your people and how you lead and how your leaders speak to them. That old trick of speaking. Boys like this, actually, speaking to boys, to them as individuals and to them as a group, as if they are the people that they would like to be and you would like them to be, rather than always, you've got to do this to get there, you've got to do that, you're not doing this. Speak to them as if they are those people.
So, Tom, as we sort of come to the end of this conversation, it feels like we're coming full circle. We started with some of the challenges and opportunities of the 21st century. In what you're seeing, and as you speak to leaders in boys' schools around the world, what are some of the future trends in your mind in boys' education?
Yeah, Bruce, I optimistic, but I believe that boys' schools are really well suited for what's coming our way. I really, really do. I think that rising technology, growth of artificial intelligence will play on the strengths of a liberal education. It's going to become increasingly important that we develop young people, boys, who are adaptable, complexity, variety, who see their part in a bigger contribution to community, that we work with on that side that leans to humanity. And I think that boys' schools are really well placed to that what we do and what we're trying to do is going to equip them to be able to investigate things. We know boys like to dismantle things, pick them, find out how they work. We know they like to solve problems. We know they like to be part of making a difference and bring about improvement. And all these things are going to play to that blending of economic enterprise and social enterprise, and how the two things increasingly are going to be one. They like their autonomy, and I really strongly feel that we're coming into an age, a time where boys' schools really are going to equip and play a part in the changes that are already upon us and will continue at a reasonable fair lick, I suspect, in the coming years. So optimistic. I think it's good times, and it's how we build. It's how we build good people, and real ways we build good people, because it takes time. It really does. Not just a semester course on being a good person. It takes time and care.
Well, Tom, thanks so much for sharing your insights. It's been wonderful to spend this time with you.
Hey, Bruce, not at all. Always good to chat.
I did also want to mention that registration for our annual conference remains open until the 29th of June. So that gives people lots of time to still register and get to New Zealand. I'm sure you're looking just as forward to that as I am.
Very, very much. As a New Zealander as well. If you're tottering on the brink, get down there. It's a beautiful, beautiful country. Lovely, lovely people. And David Ferguson at Westlake and his team are doing a great job. And it's going to be a magnificent conference steeped in good practice for boys' schools, steeped in multiculture. It's going to be a special event. So if you've any way at all, you have the means and capacity to get there, then I'd get down to Aotearoa and be part of it.